Again, I'm a tad late to the party, but my wife and I just binge-watched both seasons 1 and 2 of Stephen King's television series Castle Rock on Hulu, and I just gotta talk about it. I'm Troy from Marks on TV, and today I'm talking about what the hell happened in Castle Rock and looking for some answers to my many questions. Now, on with the story. If you're planning on watching Castle Rock and you don't want any spoilers, this ain't the video to be watching, so here's your warning.
Spoiler alert!
Season 1 was actually pretty good, if I do say so myself. We find out from Jump Street that the retiring warden of Shawshank Correctional Facility, Warden Lacey, was keeping a guy, played by Bill Skarsgård, locked inside of a little cage inside of the bowels of an abandoned part of the prison. No one knows at first how long he'd been there, but it was seemingly quite a while. Also, the warden retired and offed himself. They only refer to Skarsgård's character as the Kid. The guy doesn't speak, except to say one name: Henry Matthew Deaver. Henry Deaver is a criminal attorney living in Texas, but as a kid living in Castle Rock, he was adopted by the Deavers, Reverend Matthew and Ruth. When he was 10, back in 1991, he went out to the woods with his dad and disappeared for about 10 days. He was later found by Sheriff Alan Pangborn with zero memory of what happened. His father was found before that, seemingly pushed off of a cliff. This led to his death, and everyone claimed Henry was lying about having no memory because he killed his father. Anyway, Henry got an anonymous call from a prison guard letting him know about the Kid, and Henry rushes back to Castle Rock to represent him. Weird stuff starts happening around the Kid, like people lying or having hallucinations or becoming violent. One of the prison guards, Dennis, even goes on a rampage and kills nearly every guard in the prison for seemingly no reason. As more is revealed about the backstory of Henry and the Kid's past, we find out that the Kid showed up on the exact same day that Henry disappeared. Somehow, Warden Lacey found him, decided he was the devil, and took him into captivity. Sheriff Pangborn found out about this and, for some reason, decided to trust the warden and let this all happen. The Kid proves, little by little, that he has intimate knowledge of Alan Pangborn, Ruth Deaver, Henry's friend Molly Strand, and Castle Rock as a whole. Because Molly is more eager to listen, the Kid finally talks and spills the beans to her. The Kid is from another dimension. In that dimension, the Deavers actually birthed a son and named him Henry. That's the Kid. He had a full life in the other dimension, being a husband and expecting father. His father went nuts, like he did in this dimension that we'd been living in, and in the other dimension, his mother actually divorced his father and ran off to Florida with Sheriff Pangborn. You following me so far? Well, anyway, his father finally ended himself, and the Kid, Henry, whatever, came back to clean up the house in Castle Rock. There, he found the Henry we know locked in a small cage in the basement. Turns out, the Henry we know ran into the woods, shoved his crazy dad off a cliff, and then fell into this dimension. The Reverend Deaver in that dimension thought that he was the devil or whatever and locked him up. Again, following me so far? It's a lot. Well then, the Kid/Henry calls the cops and lets him loose. The Henry that we know runs off into the woods, seemingly to find the rift between dimensions he went through. The Kid/Henry follows him, and they see some old-timey 1600s looking people. That will come into play later. Either way, they go through the dimensional rift, and shortly after, the Henry that we know was found by Sheriff Pangborn, and the Kid was abducted by Warden Lacey. I'm leaving a lot out, but that's the gist. Even after hearing all of this, Henry doesn't believe it, and starts to think that the Kid is evil. They go into the woods, but instead of letting him go, Henry holds a gun to him, and ends up going back to the now shuttered Shawshank prison to lock him back in the same cage that he'd been in for 27 years. The Kid ends up giving an evil smile at the last shot that we see of him, so we're led to believe that he made everything up. Maybe? Besides traveling through dimensions. But we don't know. It's all ambiguous. That was fine enough, but now let's go to Season 2, which was just an acid trip on top of about 10 pounds of crap stuffed into a 5-pound bag. We're introduced to Annie Wilkes from Misery, if any of you remember the movie starring Kathy Bates, or if you read the book, and Annie's daughter Joy. They're shown traveling for years and years, never staying in one place for long. Annie is an RN that keeps stealing meds for herself and then piecing out of town. Finally, when they cross into Jerusalem's Lot, which is apparently right next to Castle Rock, she's digging for pills in her bag and wrecks their vehicle. This keeps him in town for a while. Giving the TLDR version, Pops Merrill adopted his nephews, Chris and Ace, after their dad killed Pops' sister, their mother. Also, he adopted 2 Somali refugees, Nadia and Abdi, after their mother was killed by US military. Turns out Pops did it, but that's not important to the stuff that I'm about to tell you. Pops is Mr. Big Johnson in town and owns or pays off everything and everyone. Ace is a big mouth and does a lot of business for Pops and runs the motel that Annie and Joy are staying at. Joy accidentally sees Ace doing something illegal, and later, Ace threatens Annie. Annie kills Ace and dumps his body in a construction site. The construction site is right over some underground tunnels with old coffins and creepy stuff in it, and Ace's body falls into it. Later, Ace comes back to life, and Annie thinks she's crazy. Well, she is, but she's also wondering if she made up the whole killing Ace thing all up in her head. It turns out that Ace fell into this coffin of an old French settler from Salem's Lot, and now that person has been resurrected in Ace. You following me so far? Anywho, Ace starts picking off more people, putting them in caskets, and reviving his fellow French settlers. Back to them in a bit. We get Annie's backstory revealed after a while when Joy leaves her, thinking that she's not safe with the crazy lady. You don't say. And she gets some spicy deets about her past. Annie grew up with a writer for a father and a somewhat overbearing mother. Annie's dad used Annie as his book critic and to help him type up his work on a computer, since he only liked using typewriters. Annie was in high school and could barely read, so her mom hired a tutor, Rita, who Annie absolutely adored, and they got along great. Annie started reading really well and became close with Rita. Rita ended up getting pregnant, and Annie's parents split up with her dad moving out. Her mom became an alcoholic and drove both her and Annie into a lake, trying to end them both, but Annie got out, her mom did not. Annie's dad moved back in, announced Rita's baby was actually his, and he was marrying Rita. Annie got pretty pissed at her dad for cheating on her mom and driving her to self-deletion. You know, like you do. This became a big rift in their relationship. Finally, her dad got his book finished and published and dedicated it to Rita. This was the final straw for Annie, who pushed her dad down some stairs, the railing broke, and her dad became a human shish kebab. Rita finally woke up to see this and ran, but Annie scissored her. No, not in a dirty way, more in a stabby-stabby kind of way. Annie took the baby and was going to drown them both, but the baby laughed, and Annie decided to go on the lam with her, raising the baby as her own. Flash forward to now, we find out that Rita is still alive. Joy calls her and hangs up after only a few words, but Rita puts 2 and 2 together and tracks them down to Salem's Lot. Flash forward a bit, Joy shows up to see that Rita is leading Annie into the woods at gunpoint and decides to jab Rita in the arm with a needle full of this numbing stuff that Annie had in her medical supplies. Rita dropped the gun, it went off, and now, no more Rita. Back to the Frenchies for a bit. Back in the 1600s, some French settlers in Salem's Lot were basically dying out. A town leader kicks the town preacher out for sleeping with his daughter Amity, and also kicks Amity out along with him. Amity finds someone that she claims is an angel that grants her power and tells her of future prophecy. Amity and the preacher come back, kill the town leaders, and lead the rest of them to prosperity. The angel then tells them to eat some bug-looking thing, slits their throats, and die in a casket in tunnels under Salem's Lot. Then, someday, they'd be resurrected. That's how we get to them wearing other people in modern times. The French guy inside of Ace Merrill believes that Joy is the perfect vessel for Amity because she draws. Yeah, that's about it. This season is stupid. Anyway, most of the town is Looney Tunes now, and in a trance, looking at a statue of an angel. Come to find out, that angel is, wait for it, Bill Skarsgård's character! Yeah! Pops Merrill actually had a collection of old letters from Warden Lacey saying that he found out that the kid/angel/Bill Skarsgård could travel between dimensions and through time and whatever. How? Why? Don't know. But yeah, so everything that we thought we knew about him from Season 1 was bunk. Either way, Annie, Pops, Nadia, Abdi, and a few others end up blowing up the tunnels, saving Joy, and thwarting the Frenchies' evil plot. Annie and Joy take off and finally make it to Canada, you know, America's hat, which is where Annie wanted to go from the get-go. Annie becomes a nurse for bedridden old folks, and Joy is not so joyful. Annie thinks Joy's actually possessed by Amity because Joy was watching some French soap operas on TV and keeps drawing Bill Skarsgård's eyes in her diary. This sets Annie off, and Annie decides to drown Joy in the lake behind the house they're living in. Annie ends up walking inside the house, finding a note that Joy wrote, explaining that she's sorry for how she's been acting, but she's going through a lot and needs to go find herself and leave Annie behind. Annie realizes what she's done, runs back out, and performs CPR on Joy to bring her back to life. Joy wakes up with no recollection of what happened, fortunate for Annie, so Annie lies and says that Joy fell off the dock. By the way, when Annie got her new job, she started reading more, and this started her love for the Misery novels. So anyway, Annie and Joy are excited that they got seats at this public reading and book signing for Paul Sheldon, the writer of the Misery novels. When at the book signing, Annie sees her dead mother and dead father in the crowd. We're then shown that she never actually brought Joy back to life. Joy's dead, and Annie's just seeing what she wants to see. So yeah, they jackhammered all that stuff into the very last episode of the season, by the way, but this all leads me to my many, many questions. How the hell did Annie Wilkes from Misery fit into Salem's Lot? Yeah, you just dropped her ass into the story. I get it. But that's kind of dumb, and it felt like you were jamming a round peg into a square hole. Why? And before anyone hits me with,
well, you see, all of Stephen King's stories are connected via the Dark Tower, therefore...
Yeah, I know all of that. But this didn't work. It's like throwing Medea into an Austin Powers movie. Would it be funny? Maybe. Are they both comedy films? Yes. Would it make sense? Hell no. Misery wasn't a supernatural thriller like many of King's works. Misery was a straight-up crazy chick that kidnapped an author that she was obsessed with and forced him to write a new ending to his latest novel. You know, the Twitter warrior fantasy. My next thing is about Annie as well. After fighting for like 16 years for Joy, risking everyone's life for her, killing people, being on the run, etc., why would she just snap like she did and murder her? Even if she thought she was possessed, what good was murdering her gonna do? Yeah, she's a crazy lady doing crazy lady things. But this makes less sense than Daenerys Targaryen snapping at the end of Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Oh, sorry, spoilers. My next question is, wasn't Salem's Lot about vampires? What the hell was with all of this French settlers in the 1600s and the angel-devil thing? And why did we force in some story about Somali refugees moving into the area? It was so damn weird. Admittedly, I never read the book or watched the movie. That's on my watch list. Keeping on questions about all of this, though, I'm assuming that they thought the show would go on longer than it did. It felt like the Season 2 had at least 2 seasons worth of material jammed into one. I think Annie's story would have worked well as a standalone season, and the Salem's Lot stuff would have been great as its own season. On top of that, in Season 1, there was a somewhat prominent side character named Jackie Torrance that was apparently the niece of Jack Torrance from The Shining. She said something about wanting to become a writer at the end of the season, and she used an axe at one point, in a defensive manner, and she said that she wanted to be around more crazy crap because it made life fun. So, I'm assuming that was an Easter egg for a future season with her as the main character? Maybe going into a storyline involving The Shining and the Torrance family? Maybe even a prequel to Dr. Sleep? Who knows? But it's a dead issue now, pardon the pun. As far as the dimensional rift in the woods and by Castle Lake, why was that a thing? Again, it's never explained. It's just kind of there, and we're meant to accept it. What happened there to cause this? I was pretty sure that in Stephen King's universe, all the dimensions converge at the Dark Tower, but I don't know how it works, honestly, traveling between them. And finally, who the hell was Bill Skarsgård? Was he the Man in Black, aka Randall Flagg, aka the Ageless Stranger, aka Bill Hinch, etc.? I mean, I guess he could be, but he didn't act like that. The Man in Black occasionally acted as a demon, giving Crossroads deals with a monkey's paw effect and whatnot, and obviously he can travel freely between dimensions, as we've seen in various incarnations in a lot of Stephen King's work, but this was just odd. Season 1 left it somewhat ambiguous, and then Season 2 blew up everything we thought we knew. Comment down below with your thoughts on Castle Rock. Also, if you have comments or answers to any of my questions, then please let me know. These are real, honest questions and critiques that my wife and I both had. I know more about the Stephen King universe than she does, so I picked up on some more of the Easter eggs than she did, and even I was lost with this one. All in all, it was still a worthwhile watch, in my opinion. Also, please share this video around to everyone you know, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell to be notified every time we post brand new content. I've been Troy from Marks on TV. I will see you next time.